The Forgotten Ones. For centuries, the Galactic Council had ruled without challenge. The vast expanse of the galaxy was under their control, and they had long forgotten the old wars, the old enemies. Among them, one name had faded into legend: humanity. Once, the humans had been a rising power, advancing faster than anyone had expected. But then, without warning, they vanished. No one knew why. Some believed they had destroyed themselves in war. Others thought they had simply faded away, unable to survive the harsh realities of space. The Council recorded them as lost, a failed civilization that had disappeared into the void. But history has a way of correcting mistakes. The signal that shouldn't exist. It started as a whisper in the darkness. A deep space listening post, stationed at the edge of the Vartok expanse, detected a strange transmission. Old, distorted, almost unrecognizable. The operators initially ignored it. After all, space was full of meaningless echoes from long-dead civilizations. But then, the transmission repeated. This time, they ran it through their systems, trying to decipher the code. What they found sent waves of panic through the station. The language was ancient, one that hadn't been seen for hundreds of years. And yet, it was clear, unmistakable. It was human. The operators immediately sent the data to their superiors. Within hours, the news had reached the highest levels of the Galactic Council. Meetings were called, alarms raised. No one wanted to believe it, but the evidence was undeniable. Humanity was alive. Denial and fear. The Council leaders refused to accept it at first. Impossible. The Supreme Speaker, Altren of the Zoreth Dominion, scoffed as he reviewed the transmission. They are long dead. This is a trick, an anomaly. But deep inside the restricted archives, there were those who knew the truth, those who had been keeping records of humanity's disappearance, waiting for the day they might return. One of them was Admiral Callus of the Phyrexian fleet, a veteran who had studied the old wars. He stared at the data in silence, his reptilian fingers tightening around the armrest of his chair. He had read the reports, the old battle logs. He had seen what humanity was capable of before they vanished. And now, they were back. A mission into the unknown. A recon fleet was dispatched immediately. A dozen ships, armed and prepared for anything, were sent to track the source of the signal. Their orders were clear. Find the source. Identify the threat. Eliminate if necessary. As they approached the outer edges of the Vartok expanse, they expected to find a derelict station, maybe a hidden outpost clinging to life. What they found instead was something far more terrifying. Drifting through space was a massive structure, a station unlike anything seen before. It was dark, silent, but not abandoned. Their scanners detected movement, energy signatures, and something else, a presence that made their skin crawl. The lead commander, Captain Relm, hesitated before sending a message. "This is Captain Relm of the Galactic Council Reconnaissance Fleet. Identify yourself." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, the comms crackled to life. A voice, clear and cold, responded in perfect galactic standard. "We have returned." The fleet barely had time to react before the station powered up, revealing massive warships hidden in its shadow. Their hulls were black as the void, their weapons far beyond anything the Council had ever seen. Humanity had not just survived. They had evolved. The Galactic Council's recon fleet hovered in stunned silence as the massive station powered up before them. Their instruments flickered with unreadable energy signatures, their communications crackled with interference, and the void itself seemed to hum with an unseen force. The voice that had spoken to them had been unmistakably human, but there was something different about it, something colder, something far more controlled than the old human transmissions buried in the archives. Captain Relm, seated at the command throne of the lead battleship, tried to steady his breathing as he exchanged nervous glances with his bridge crew. The officers around him were trained for every possible encounter: hostile warlords, rogue AI fleets, even unknown alien species. But they were not trained for this. Humanity had been wiped from history, erased from the records as a long-forgotten failure. Yet here they were, speaking with a confidence that suggested they had never been gone at all. The station's dark exterior gleamed against the distant starlight, its hull reinforced with materials that scanners failed to identify. The fleet's top-tier weapons struggled to get an accurate target lock, as if the very structure before them refused to be measured by conventional technology. It was clear now that the humans had not just survived. They had advanced far beyond anything the Council could have imagined. A sudden alert blared across the command deck as the fleet's proximity alarms erupted in chaotic warnings. From the shadows of the station, massive ships emerged, silent, sleek, and radiating a power unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Their black hulls seemed to absorb the starlight. Their engines pulsed with a cold, steady glow, and they moved without the telltale vibrations of conventional thrusters. Captain Relm swallowed hard, his instincts screaming at him to issue an immediate retreat, but protocol demanded diplomacy first. He forced himself to straighten, activating the fleet-wide comms channel, his voice steady, but edged with barely contained anxiety. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves. This is Captain Relm of the Galactic Council Reconnaissance Fleet. We are here under the authority of the Council to investigate anomalous signals. State your purpose." The silence stretched long enough that doubt began to creep in, but then, with a precision that sent shivers down the spines of every officer present, a single ship moved forward, its massive form dwarfing the largest of the Council's warships. The voice returned, the same cold, unwavering tone. "You seek to investigate. Very well. Then witness." Without further warning, the human vessel vanished from their sensors, blinking out of existence in a way that defied all known physics. Then, before any of the fleet's crew could react, it reappeared directly behind them, its weapons locked onto every critical system of their ships. It had taken only a fraction of a second. Not even the fastest hyperdrives in the known galaxy could achieve such instantaneous movement. Panic rippled through the fleet. Officers scrambled to reroute shields. Engineers frantically worked to break the electronic jamming that had suddenly overtaken their systems, and gunners tried, uselessly, to find a targeting solution. Captain Relm's hands clenched the armrests of his chair as he realized the truth. The fleet was not outmatched. It was obsolete. A cold realization settled over the Council officers. The humans were playing with them. They could have destroyed them in an instant, yet they chose to demonstrate their power instead. It was a message, one that no translation was needed to understand. The Galactic Council had believed humanity was dead and forgotten. Now, humanity was proving them wrong. Another transmission came through, but this time, the voice had a new weight to it, one of finality. "You have seen enough. Return to your masters. Tell them we remember." And with those words, the human ships vanished once more, disappearing into the void as if they had never been there. The recon fleet remained frozen in place, the silence pressing against them like the crushing weight of an unseen force. There were no more warnings, no more threats. There was no need for them. The message had been delivered. Humanity had returned, and they were stronger than ever. The bridge of Captain Relm's flagship remained eerily silent as the Galactic Council officers stared at the empty void where the human fleet had just been. Even though their ships had disappeared, the tension in the air remained suffocating, like a phantom presence that refused to fade. Every officer on board knew, deep in their core, that what they had just witnessed was impossible. Ships did not simply vanish and reappear across vast distances in the blink of an eye. Technology did not evolve in secret to such an unfathomable degree, especially from a species that had been declared extinct centuries ago. And yet, the humans had not only survived, they had thrived in the shadows, growing beyond anything the Council had ever thought possible. Captain Relm exhaled slowly, his mind racing through every possible course of action. They could not simply return to the Council and report this as an anomaly. No, this was far more than that. This was a revelation that could shake the very foundation of the galaxy's power structure. If humanity had been hiding for centuries, developing technology that defied every known law of physics, then the balance of power was about to shift in a way that no one was prepared for. The other species of the Council had grown complacent, believing themselves to be the pinnacle of civilization, unchallenged in their control of the stars. They had spent centuries basking in their supposed superiority, dismissing humanity as a footnote in history, a race that had failed to adapt and had perished because of it. But now, the truth was undeniable. Humanity had never been gone. They had simply been waiting. "Sir," one of the officers whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "Orders." The entire crew was watching Realm, waiting for him to decide their next move. But what could they do? Attacking was suicide. Running would accomplish nothing. Negotiation. That thought was almost laughable. What could they possibly offer a civilization that had clearly surpassed them in every way? He turned his gaze back to the sensors, hoping for something, anything, that might tell him the humans had left for good. But deep down, he knew they hadn't. They were still there, watching from the shadows, testing the Council's response, waiting for the inevitable panic that would spread like wildfire once this information reached the higher ranks. Then, just as the silence threatened to crush them, the comms crackled back to life. The same cold, measured voice returned, but this time, there was something different about it. It was no longer a warning. It was a statement, a declaration. "You believe yourselves rulers of the galaxy," the voice said, each word carrying the weight of unshakable certainty. "You have grown comfortable in your dominance, blind to the reality beyond your borders. But now the time of your unquestioned reign is over. Humanity has returned. And this time, we do not come as equals. We come as something greater." A flicker of motion on the sensors sent another wave of unease through the crew. The human ships were back. All of them. Dozens, hundreds, forming an unbreakable wall of darkened steel and raw power. They had allowed the Council fleet to believe they had escaped, to believe they still had a chance to control the situation. But now, it was clear, the humans had never left. They had simply given them time to understand just how helpless they truly were. A new figure appeared on the main view screen, a human unlike any the Council had seen before. He stood tall, clad in sleek, unfamiliar armor that shimmered with an energy that defied explanation. His expression was calm, but his eyes held a quiet fury, the weight of centuries of betrayal and exile burning behind them. "Your time is up," he said simply. "Tell your Council that we are coming. And this time, we make the rules." The transmission cut. The human fleet, once again, disappeared into the void. And for the first time in galactic history, the rulers of the known universe felt fear. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Every officer, every crew member, stood frozen, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. The humans were not only back, but they were far beyond anything the Galactic Council could have ever predicted. Their technology defied known physics, their ships moved with impossible precision, and their words carried a confidence that sent shivers down the spines of every species that had once ruled the stars unchallenged. Captain Realm had faced countless threats in his time, but nothing, compared to this. His hands trembled as he ran them over the control panel, scanning for any trace of the human fleet. But there was nothing. Not a single energy signature. No residual warp trails. No electronic emissions. It was as if they had never been there at all, except they had. And they had left a message loud and clear. They were coming. The crew shifted uneasily. No one spoke. They all knew what this meant. The Galactic Council had grown comfortable, arrogant even, believing themselves untouchable. Humanity had been wiped from the records, declared extinct, a failed species that had vanished into the void. But now, after centuries of silence, they had returned, and they had not been idle. They had grown stronger, far stronger. Realm turned sharply toward his communications officer. "Get me a direct line to High Command. Now." The officer hesitated for only a second before scrambling to comply, his fingers flying across the console. The transmission request was sent, but even as the signal pulsed through the relay stations, Realm knew what was coming. Panic. Chaos. The Council was not ready for this. None of them were. Minutes passed. Then the holoscreen flickered to life, and the image of High Counselor Zemar appeared. His reptilian face was impassive, but Realm could see the barely restrained irritation in his narrowed eyes. "Captain," Zemar said, his voice clipped. "You requested direct priority transmission. This had better be important." Realm took a breath. "Sir," he began carefully, "we've encountered them." For the first time, Zemar's expression changed. His ridged brow furrowed, his sharp teeth clicking together once in contemplation. "Elaborate," he ordered, his voice quieter now. "The humans," Realm said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're back." A long silence followed. Then, slowly, the counselor's claws tapped against the table in front of him. "That is not possible," he said. "Humanity was destroyed." "Yes, we all believed that," Realm interrupted, the urgency in his voice overriding protocol. "But we were wrong. They survived, and they have evolved. Their technology is beyond anything we've ever seen. They can phase in and out of real space. Their ships, hundreds of them, are completely undetectable when they choose to be. And they delivered a message, Counselor." Zemar's eyes narrowed. "What message?" Realm exhaled. His voice came out lower this time, as if speaking the words made them real. "They said the time of the Galactic Council is over. They are coming. And this time, they make the rules." Another long silence. The counselor's face, usually so composed, flickered with the briefest trace of something almost primal. Fear. Real, unmistakable fear. Then, a sudden, sharp alarm rang across the bridge. The officers turned, their eyes widening in horror as the sensors finally registered something. Not a full fleet, not an attack, but a single object moving toward them at speeds that should not have been possible. Realm's eyes locked onto the screen. A lone ship, human in origin, was barreling toward their fleet at an incomprehensible velocity, shattering every known limit of acceleration. The energy readings coming from it were off the charts, unlike anything ever recorded before. It was as if the very laws of physics were bending around its form, warping space itself to allow its impossible movement. "Counselor," Realm whispered, unable to tear his gaze from the oncoming ship. "You need to see this." The holoscreen adjusted, feeding the data directly to Zemar's end. For the first time in Realm's career, he saw true terror reflected in the High Counselor's face. "By the stars," Zemar breathed. "What have they become?" The ship kept coming. It did not slow. It did not waver. And the unspoken truth settled over them like a crushing weight. Humanity was not just back. They were beyond anything the galaxy had ever known. A deathly silence filled the bridge as the human warship continued its relentless approach, defying every known law of physics. It moved with a grace and purpose that no known vessel should possess, slipping between real space and something else, something unnatural, something beyond comprehension. The officers of the Galactic Council fleet had faced many threats over the centuries, but never had they witnessed anything like this. Their sensors struggled to lock onto the ship, their calculations failing to predict its trajectory. It was like trying to track a ghost. Captain Realm's claws tapped anxiously against the console. He had never felt so helpless, so utterly outmatched. "Hail them again," he ordered, his voice tight. His communications officer hesitated. "Sir, they are already broadcasting a message." Realm's eyes widened. "Put it through." The holoscreen flickered to life, and for the first time in centuries, the voice of a human echoed across the stars. It was calm, unwavering, and carried an authority that sent shivers down every spine on the bridge. "We remember." The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of history, of suffering, of a vengeance long delayed. The crew exchanged nervous glances. No demands, no declarations of war, just those two words. But those words meant everything. Relm's breath was unsteady. He turned back to the screen. "Human vessel, identify yourself," he said, forcing authority into his voice. Silence. Then the ship vanished. Not warped away, not cloaked. Simply gone, as if it had never been there at all. The crew erupted into chaos. Officers scrambled over their consoles, desperately trying to locate the ship. It was impossible. Nothing should be able to just disappear like that. Even cloaking technology left residual distortions, but here, there was nothing. Relm gritted his teeth. This was worse than an open battle. This was psychological warfare at its finest. The humans weren't just showing their power, they were showing their control. They wanted the Council to know they could strike at will. Then, a sudden alert. The holoscreen changed, now displaying hundreds of human warships emerging from the void. Their sleek, dark forms loomed in the distance, their configurations unlike anything in the galactic database. These were not the ships of a primitive race. These were weapons of absolute dominance. Relm's blood ran cold. Another transmission came through, and this time, the voice was even more chilling. "You erased us from history. Now, we will write the final chapter." The galactic fleet's alarms blared. The humans were not waiting. Their ships accelerated in unison, their movements coordinated beyond anything artificial intelligence could accomplish. They were not just an army. They were a force of nature. Battle stations. Relm shouted, but he already knew. It was too late. The moment the order for battle stations was given, it was already irrelevant. The sheer scale of the human fleet was beyond comprehension. A force that should not exist, yet did. Every ship in their formation moved with an eerie precision, a silent unity that spoke of absolute control, not by algorithms, but by something far more dangerous, human instinct honed by centuries of exile and adaptation. The Galactic Council's fleet had been built on dominance, on the assumption that they were the pinnacle of military power. They had fought countless wars, crushed rebellions, and expanded their rule across thousands of star systems. Yet, in this moment, every officer aboard every Council warship realized the terrible truth. They were no longer the apex predators of the galaxy. For the first time in history, they were prey. Sensors screamed with incoming data. The human fleet wasn't just approaching, it was already in attack position. The Council's ships scrambled to adjust, but their formations, tactics designed for conventional warfare, were useless against an enemy that did not fight conventionally. The humans weren't following battle doctrines, weren't waiting for an opening. They were the opening. A massive energy surge erupted from the lead human warship, a ship unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. The flagship was not just a vessel, but a statement. Its hull was dark, almost absorbing light itself, adorned with markings that had long since faded from galactic history books. It shouldn't exist, and yet it was here, moving toward the Council's fleet like a silent executioner. Then, the first strike came. A beam of pure devastation ripped through real space, not just destroying the lead Council battleship, but erasing it from existence. No debris, no wreckage, just nothing. Shock spread through the Council's forces like wildfire. They had prepared for war, but this wasn't war. This was annihilation. "Return fire." Admiral Varelon bellowed from the command carrier, his fur bristling in pure terror. "Hit them with everything we have." Missiles, plasma lances, disruptor waves. The full might of the Council's armada was unleashed. A storm of energy tore through space toward the human fleet. It should have been enough to wipe out an entire planetary defense grid in seconds. But the humans did not falter. Their ships vanished, not warped, not cloaked, but simply blinked out of existence, dodging the attacks in ways that defied physics. And then, as if mocking the very concept of space and time, they reappeared behind the Council's ships, weapons already primed. Then came the second strike. An entire Council dreadnought, one of the most powerful warships ever built, was split apart in an instant, its armored plating torn like paper, its core detonating in a silent inferno. There was no time for distress calls, no time for retreat. The humans were faster. The humans were stronger. And worst of all, the humans were not holding back. Another transmission came through, this time across all channels. The same voice, calm and absolute. You ruled in our absence. You erased our history. You thought we were gone. Now you will know what it means to face the forgotten. Admiral Varlon's mind raced. This wasn't just vengeance. This was a reckoning. The human fleet had no weaknesses. Their technology was beyond anything the Council could understand. Their tactics were unpredictable, ruthless, and devastatingly efficient. And their weapons didn't just kill, they erased. Every second that passed, another ship was lost. The Council's once mighty fleet was being unmade before his very eyes. Then, a final alert. The human flagship was charging something far worse. And this time, it wasn't aimed at a ship. It was aimed at the homeworld. Panic erupted across the Galactic Council's remaining forces. This wasn't just a battle anymore. It was the end. The human flagship, an impossibly massive construct of darkened steel and eerie silence, was aiming directly at the Council's homeworld. Every surviving admiral, every officer, every soldier across the fleet knew what that meant. If that weapon fired, their civilization would cease to exist. Admiral Varlon, once the proud commander of the Council's mightiest fleet, was frozen in place. His claws dug into the metal of his command station, his eyes locked onto the impossible sight before him. The humans had defied logic, ignored reality, and now stood on the edge of unleashing destruction on a scale never seen before. He swallowed his pride, his fear, his anger. There was only one option left: surrender. With shaking hands, he opened a transmission. "This is Admiral Varlon of the Galactic Council. We acknowledge your power. We were wrong. We should not have." The transmission cut off. A human face appeared on the screen. Cold, emotionless, unreadable. Behind them, the bridge of their warship was silent, their crew watching without a word. No celebration, no cruelty, just calculated judgment. "You acknowledge your mistake," the human voice echoed. "After centuries of oppression, after silencing our existence, after rewriting history to erase us." Varlon felt his breath catch. This was not a negotiation. This was a trial. The human continued, their voice like ice. "The Council ruled in arrogance, thinking itself untouchable. You built your empire on the graves of those you deemed unworthy. But we were never gone. We were never broken. And now you face the consequences." Silence followed. Then, the final command came. Fire. A surge of blinding energy erupted from the human flagship, but it did not strike the planet. Instead, it ripped through the Galactic Council's last warships, reducing them to nothing more than dust floating in the void. It was a message, a reminder, a warning. The human fleet turned, vanishing into the darkness just as suddenly as they had appeared. They had proven their point. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never forget them again.